Sex is complex.
Sex is intimacy.
Is love.
Sex is erotic.
Silenced.
Sex is labeled.
Sex is still not spoken.
Scrutinized.
Let's stop searching.
Sex is demonized.
Sex is life.
Sex is bi.
Let's stop shaming.
It's time to talk about sex.
So people know about HIV and AIDS generally, but do they know enough? And has it shifted their relationships, the way they understand themselves? Has it shifted behaviors around safety and protection and all of those kinds of things? And we feel like HIV and AIDS cannot be looked at singularly. Can't be looked at just from a medical model. It also needs to be looked at culturally, in terms of gender, in terms of relationships, sex, sexuality, and that's kind of what inspired us. Is maybe what we're needing actually is to get people to start talking about sex, because that's where it starts. Let's not pretend that messages are going to change people's behavior or shift the way people understand who they are in a contemporary society.
It's really a kind of exploration of relationships, of sexual relationships, of kind of sexual promiscuity, of the risks of sex, of our fear of being abandoned, of being alone after sexual relationships. But it kind of is set against the backdrop of kind of late night Joburg clubbing culture. So it's called Deep Night because it refers to that time in the morning, early morning, kind of just before sunrise, where there's this blurred boundary between what is real and what is not real, and people aren't quite lucid and conscious of what they're doing, and when people take the greatest risks.
I think sex actually is a great theme. It's it's one of the most difficult things that people who are HIV positive negotiate, the terrain, and it is one of the areas that people who have prejudices about HIV positive people, it's one of the areas where the prejudices boil over the most. We got it because we had sex, it's our fault, that kind of stuff. And how dare you still have sex? So, and a lot of people are afraid, a lot of people are scared, a lot of people don't have sex, a lot of people don't know what to do. It's, so I think it kind of brings it front and center and puts it out there, which is a good thing.
I hope that people take away that the basic idea that I offer in the last piece, which is that, it's offered earlier in the play. You have a dick, you're a man, and later it's offered in the play that you don't have to prove yourself to be a man. A man isn't all of these things that we put on top of these cultural things that we put on top of it. There are many different ways to be a man, and no one way is better than the other. So it's kind of asking men to accept themselves, and the idea that it's okay to hurt, and it's okay to be emotional, and it's okay to process these things, because when we don't process them, like I say in the poem, we're not allowed to feel physical hurt. So when we feel emotional hurt, we manifest it by hurting other people physically, and that's a tragedy that doesn't need to happen. So I hope that people take away that they can be who they want to be.
We as black women, when you grow up, you never hear the word sex. We are not even allowed to watch Days or Bold because there's too much sex, they believe. And as soon as it goes like S, and then they see the S, and then they're like, okay, you must go to your room or whatever. So sex, it's kind of like, even if you have your first period, it's like, and then they take you to your room, and then they never talk about it. They talk around humanity stuff, and they never talk about sex as itself, as in sex. So the first time I did the sex part, my producer was like, oh, actually you can even talk about sex as a black woman. I was like, yeah, I can, just because I'm on stage. But like off the stage, it's quite difficult.
We have a lens that we look at HIV, we look through HIV, with that lens of sexual. Even though it might not be sexual, like a child having, HIV, it's nothing sexual about it. we have to find ways of speaking about sex, that are acceptable within our culture, but are speaking the truth about what sex is and what it brings about, and then begin to deconstruct acting sexually about HIV/AIDS, and knowing that HIV/AIDS affects people and it's people's life stories. It's not sex. As much as it is transmitted about sex, once it gets into the body, it becomes you. You are part of it, and there's nothing sexual about it.
Playback theatre, where people in the audience tell stories from their lives. The theme of the show is supposed to be transformation. We're dealing with the theme of sex, actually. In this context, we had a very young audience, so we decided instead to talk prevention, which is about building self-esteem, feeling good about yourself. So the different shows will be different based on the audience.
The play is about a couple who live in the city, and then somehow the man's latent sexuality gets triggered by the circumstances that he finds himself in the city, because this play looks at the role of the city in sexual relationships. And in the study, like Lord Humphreys had looked at people's behavior. So people's behavior could either be conformist or could be deviant, and it all depended on the time of day for some, and also their activities around. So something like a public bathroom could become a space where people could express their deviant selves, if anything.
Oh, there are some households where right now at this time they're trying their best to, like I do with my kids, I talk to them a lot about sex, sexuality and all those things. But there are some segments of, the community where the whole thing is still a taboo. Like when I was growing up, if somebody touched your genitals, you didn't even know what to tell your parents, because you're not supposed to talk about something that relates or that seems like it's sex, Yeah. So, but I think people are coming up. They're teaching their kids, they're talking to their kids, which is a wonderful thing.
Well, I think the range of projects, first of all, from professional productions right through to community groups coming and young people creating work, our students here at Wits creating new work. My impression is that there's incredibly innovative work. Deep Night by PJ Sabacha, performed by people like Dada Masilo, complex, interesting, sensual, not prescriptive, certainly not messaging, speaking to a contemporary dance style that is not that familiar in this country, and certainly the production could sit anywhere in the world. Peter Hayes' I'm Here, which is an incredibly courageous piece of theatre, autobiographical, but highly theatrical, beautiful set, again, challenging people to listen to stories and to stop listening to messaging and judgments, but to really just engage with the humanity of who we are and what this disease has come to mean to us.